Hello, church. So here is our devotional coming to you Tuesday afternoon about 3:15. Little later in the day because we had a ministerial meeting and some other stuff I'm continuing to figure out and play with and get into. So we are still in Proverbs chapter 6. We had our first two portions, just these kind of small segments. We are going to do two more of those portions. However, since they're somewhat connected, and that's one of the pieces it talks about, we're going to keep them together rather than going back to back with the message and Eugene Peterson's translation. So here we go. We had the Proverbs from yesterday. We talked about in the context of some of Aesop's fables and just kind of these wise teachings. They do some neat pairings, and then we also hear, I think for the first time so far in Proverbs, this pattern that's going to be coming up for us as we read through. But we'll start with our New Revised Standard, and this begins at verse 12. A scoundrel and a villain goes around with crooked speech, winking their eyes, shuffling the feet, pointing the fingers, with perverted mind devising evil, continually sowing discord. On such a one, calamity will descend suddenly, in a moment, damage beyond repair. So that's our opening section. Here's the next in this pattern you can be listening for moving forward. There are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him: haughty eyes, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that hurry to run to evil, a lying witness who testifies falsely, and one who sows discord in a family. And then a few portions of commentary. Verses 12 to 15 and 16 to 19 are poems that sketch the inside and outside of human evil. That's an interesting contrast, inside and outside, and that'll come together in a little bit. The first poem presents bodily members as instruments of wickedness, while the second presents sin as what God hates. The diversity in the first list is united by its representation of a single person with the full panoply of evil acts. Verse 15 describes the disastrous consequences of the person's evil. The second poem employs a similarly diverse list of evil deeds, now united by the Lord's opposition to them. The interaction of the two poems is facilitated by repetition and parallelism, and that's using phrases in the same structure and kind of following through on that particular line, especially of the two lists of body parts. To the bodily members may be added 2 actions for a total of 7 parallels. The list follows the order of verses 17 to 19, which explicitly identify 7 things abominable to the Lord. Verse 14 is the climax of the first poem, for it gets at the inner source or heart of human evil. And then he actually refers to the portion we did a couple days ago on the Hebrew word for heart, and it not just being an organ, but being the center of our being and from where life flows. And then we'll skip ahead to our final number 3 reflection. The juxtaposition of Proverbs 6:12 to 15 and Proverbs 6:16 to 19 is significant. It suggests that sin involves a combination of reality rejection, active malice, and rejection of the Lord as the creator and master of reality. Scripture portrays several such evil characters. Perhaps the archetypal figure is the Pharaoh of Exodus in his tyrannical persecution of the Israelites his tenacious refusal to face the reality of the plagues, the hardening of his own heart, that's in quotes if you remember that portion of the story, and his denial of the Lord. All this in spite of plague upon plague designed to make him know who the Lord is. Another is the king of Babylon from Isaiah 14:4-20. Because such figures are both malicious and at odds with reality, they incite conflict wherever they go. When they possess great power and position, they wreak devastation on the earth among humans, as Stalin and Hitler in the 20th century showed. Woo! I think that's my first woo from the NIV commentary. There you go. Now, into Gene Peterson's. And as I mentioned yesterday, we're somewhat following Peterson's titles as we go through this, and his section breaks. The NRSV is doing one continue thing under admonitions, and we're still in this section of Proverbs 1-9 with what it classifies somewhat as parental advice. So these instructions to us. But the first section he entitles, Always Cooking Up Something Nasty. It technically says something rather than something, but hey, yeah. Riffraff and rascals talk out of both sides of their mouths. They wink at each other, they shuffle their feet, they cross their fingers behind their backs. Their perverse minds are always cooking up something nasty, always stirring up trouble. Catastrophe is just around the corner for them. A total smash up, their lives ruined beyond repair. Pause there. That fingers crossed behind the back. Oh, mercy, Eugene Peterson. And then, and this will sound more familiar having read that one, this section he entitles 7 Things God Hates. And like I said, this will be a pattern that we are encountered with in some other contexts and times too. Here are 6 things God hates, and one more that he loathes with a passion. Eyes that are arrogant, a tongue that lies, hands that murder the innocent, a heart that hatches evil plots, feet that race down a wicked track, a mouth that lies under oath, a troublemaker in the family. And that's it from Eugene Peterson. I think I imagine the NIV is going to be getting into this, but when we see that pattern, and it's an intriguing phrase of like 6 things the Lord hates, and then one more, just to get that in there. 7 biblically is a number of completeness and fulfillment. Little more familiar with that in the New Testament than the Old Testament, but this is one of those pieces of Proverbs that is a clearly established pattern that we will continue to encounter and run into. So that's it for our part 2 of Proverbs 6. We should be finishing up Proverbs tomorrow with another couple of sections, and we will catch you then. Have a wonderful day and God's abundant blessings. Bye-bye.